Welcome to the Healing Helix podcast. This is one family's DNA discovery journey from secrets and trauma to love and acceptance. I am your host, Jeremy, and I am joined by my brothers Johnny and Gene. We will go day by day, step by step through our own DNA discovery journey in hopes that it starts the process of healing for anyone else out there that may be going through something similar. Yeah, very good. Your mic is good. All right. Welcome to episode 2 of the Healing Helix. This is one family's DNA discovery journey from secrets and trauma to love and acceptance. My name is Jeremy, and I'm very, very grateful to be joined by my oldest brother, Gene. Gene, say hi to everyone.
Hello. You just used my name.
How else am I supposed to do it? Just our names, nobody else's. If everyone remembers, in episode 1, our brother Johnny talked about the big reveal, which is the day that he discovered through the ancestry notifications that he had a DNA match, or him and his family had a DNA match to a half-brother, which would be me. He took us through it detail by detail, as Johnny likes to do. And I just wanted to use this episode to introduce everyone to my beautiful big brother, Gene, get his take on those first few days, and then let him just talk about what he wants to talk about when it comes to healing through all of this journey. So, Gene, if you, I'm sure you remember, I know you took some notes, but if you want to tell the audience a little bit about those first few days and how you found out and what was going through your head and how you processed it all.
Yeah, sure. I remember I was lying in bed. I think it was quite late. The phone went off and I looked at it and I'm like, uh-oh. I thought somebody was in trouble. I mean, my brother doesn't call me late at night, ever. And Sari looked over at me. Yeah. Wife looked over at me. We were worried. I said, what's up? He said, we have a brother. And I believe I said, you mean other than each other? And he said, yeah. And then he explained about ancestry. And I was just sort of numb and gobsmacked. I had just gotten back from doing a DNA story in China around my daughter. And I was like, sort of like, felt like it was another world. And my wife said, oh, your father's got some explaining to do, and was sort of humorous about it. Of course, I didn't know if my father even knew. I mean, people, have kids sometimes and never find out about them until it pop up on their doorstep. And Johnny was super excited, just really, really excited. Yaakov was super excited. Really excited. And he told me what little he knew at the time. And I don't really remember what that was, except that I think that you were in Maryland. I don't think he had done a full sleuth on you yet. I don't think he had contacted you yet through Ancestry. I thought, cool. And he said that he wanted to reach out and tell our sister, should we do it together? Talked about it a little bit. And I think we decided to do it together. And I said, oh, this is great. Johnny's really taking the bull by the horns. Yaakov's really taking the bull by the horns, and he's going to, really sort of lead on this. He was just so excited. And the next day I woke up and I realized that it was quite possible that our father did know about this. And given the difficult relationship my father had with my sister since the divorce 20 some years ago from my mother, I thought I should give him a chance to get ahead of it with her. So I called Yaakov. I said, let's let, Dad, tell our sister if she knows anything about it. And he was kind of reluctant. I mean, he really wanted to tell her. But I said, no. It's, I think it's really only fair. Yeah. And also, I think he might have, by that point, developed a bit of anger around Dad, although, we didn't know if he knew, may or may not have it. So I called the family attorney and said, because I figured he'd probably know. And I said, look, this has happened. This, person has popped up. I don't know if Dad knows about this man. I don't know if it's a complete surprise. I don't know if Ancestry once in 10,000 times gets something wrong. I don't know. But, if he wants to get ahead of it, he's going to need to do it soon.
Did you have any thought, as any human would, that it could have been some kind of scam? No?
No, I mean, I knew enough about Ancestry.com.
Let me take you back a little bit. Why do you think, knowing Yakov as long as you have, why do you think he was so excited?
Well, I mean, this was an opportunity for him to have a brother who wasn't an asshole. Which I say, of course, tongue in cheek, but I think that he, loved the idea of a fresh brother, particularly a younger one. And, when I spoke to my daughters the next day, particularly my oldest daughter, she was really excited about the idea of having sort of a fresh start with a family member, because she's had very difficult relationships with the extended family. And I think, it's interesting because I've thought about this recently. I think that particularly for the young, there's this idea that the other person is coming to you as a blank slate. And of course they're not. Intellectually, they know that, but I think emotionally they think, well, here's a person that will, really understand me they didn't know me as a little kid. They haven't been influenced by others. And, what was sort of kind of unfortunate about that, the unfortunate aspect of that is that sometimes it's also about, getting that person on your side in the various difficult family dynamics, which is, of course, a terrible thing to do on a number of levels, including to this new person. And there was some of that element in the family. I think by and large, we've managed to insulate you from that sort of natural human instinct that in Bowen family theory, they call triangulation. But I was a little worried when I spoke, so excited about her new uncle.
Wait, she saw a picture of me by then? This is like day 2?
No, this is when uncle stood for half uncle, not for hunk uncle.
Handsome uncle? I thought that's what hunkle was.
Half uncle.
Okay. I will say this, though. I can understand her kind of a fresh start approach. I mean, I felt similar things. I can start over with family relationships or start anew, or they don't need to know about my baggage, and I'm going to put on the perfect persona, and it's that dream.
That's bullshit.
It is. Well, it is. It's that dream state of meeting anyone new that you really want to impress.
But at the same time, there is an aspect to a new relationship that is very special particularly if you are in the process of personal transformation. And, for me, you came at this inflection point in my life. And so you have, you're the sibling and the close family member who has experienced me really only since the beginning of that inflection point. And so the reflection I get back from you is a very different reflection than I get back from the rest of the family, because what they see me as is pretty fixed, right? This is how families work. You remember, all the crazy things they did at 4 and jumping off the couch with a towel saying you were Superman and breaking your nose at 7, and Ulysses S. Grant being a terrible negotiator at 12 and considered hopeless by the family. And this is the way they always saw him, probably up until the time he was commander of the Army of the Potomac. So there was something really personally empowering for me by having you in my life only after these changes started to occur within me. Yeah. And I feel that there was a higher hand in that, in making that happen. Spirituality plays a significant role in how I see this reunion. You're not allowed to start crying. We're only 12 minutes.
Yeah, it is. It's astounding what a chapter like this in your life can do, not only for you personally, but spiritually and mentally. I don't know the old Gene. I don't know what everyone remembers and if you were this or you were that. I only know the Gene that tells me stories from the Bible and the lessons to be learned from them, and this painting, and the father blessing his grandchildren, and the fire you ignite in me when you talk about, how my trauma could be a vehicle for healing, not only for myself, but others in the family. And that's, it took me 4.5 years to really believe you, and, you don't,
Well, it took me about 1.5 years to realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't hear from me at first. In fact,
I didn't hear it.
You didn't hear much from me at the beginning. I let Johnny be the ambassador of love, which he was marvelously.
He really was. But
he was near you. He was with you.
Yeah.
I was out west, and then I was in Europe, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, but you came in at the right time to really get to know me when I started having to digest that this was happening. How do I grow it? How do I not piss people off? How do I not drop all my baggage on them? How do I not push them away? You were pivotal in helping me understand. You remember, I was like 1,000 miles an hour, and I wanted our sister to love me, or at least connect with me just as fast or as uniquely as you and I did.
Yeah, I don't think you and I conversed until February.
It was a good couple weeks, I think.
Yeah,
you were traveling. You were traveling.
2000.
I will say this:
we texted a little bit, and then just February 2000, and we had a FaceTime call, and I invited you and the family to come out and be with us, and you were all ready to come, and then COVID.
Yeah. I will say this, and I'm not sure if you remember it. The very first message I got from you, you were overseas working, traveling, and I was in New Hampshire. I was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So we're a couple weeks into the discovery that you guys discovered me. And so I was with my team at work, and we were at a team dinner, and of course, everyone's riveted by the story I'm telling them. And I think when they're bringing dessert or something, you texted me. And said, "Hey, listen, I just wanted to touch base with you and see if we can find some time to FaceTime and talk." And
well, I just said talk. You were surprised when I FaceTimed you.
Yes, I think so. But the instant I got that message, I shut everyone up at our table. He just texted me. I said, my oldest brother just texted me, like it's happening right now. And we'll get into just that elation is very hard to describe to anyone regarding someone like me and how I grew up. Oh my God, it's I can't think of a word. It's finally, it's like a word like finally everything you dreamed about finally somebody that looks like you or talks like you or has the same blood as you is talking to you. Right. It was a beautiful moment. It's those little moments I never forget. It's those little moments.
Well, I mean, there are these. Look, you came into a family that has a lot of love, but was just at the beginning of facing a lot of challenges. So amidst all this conflict, or the beginning of conflict since then, there's been this reunion at the same time. And of course, it leads one to think about, what's family. My mother is fond of the aphorism, blood is thicker than water. My daughter thinks that's ridiculous, that, your family is who you choose to your family. A view that I had probably up until my early 20s, but which significantly changed for me as I became a mature adult. Now being, I would have described my relationship with my sister and my brother as good to very good at the time. But since then, my sister and I are estranged. And I would have to say that I had made some assumptions about knowing her well that were probably not entirely correct. Of course, how we show up in different situations is, of course, at work here. So to some extent, I would say that my sister is and always has been something of a stranger to me. I now realize. And of course, we're all to some extent strangers to one another. I mean, that's one of the things that, one learns, and it's humbling. And if one has a good heart, it means that you just listen harder to be, I think, less of a stranger.
But there is like a 16-year difference. I mean, it's
a 13 and a half year difference. And that's part of what it is. And also since then, my relationship to Yaakov has gotten so much stronger and deeper. That I realized that, my relationship with him was really, not superficial, but not nearly as deep as it could have been. And thanks to the energy, you've brought into the family system, this opportunity of blood has become, has been able to realize so much more of its telos, its opportunity to be what it could be. And, that's one of the beautiful things about change and about a new person in the family system. When things go well, which almost overwhelmingly, I'd say things have gone far, far better than we have any right to expect. One of the things that created the inflection point in me was in February of 2000 of something called the Enneagram. I discovered it at a professional conference when we were working on family dynamic issues in business. Interestingly, one of the things that was a key topic was how to deal with cognitive decline in families and business. But one of my mentors in the industry said, why don't we have a subgroup to just talk about being what it's like to be an Enneagram 0.9. And I turned to the person next to me and I said, what the fuck is an Enneagram 0.9? I have no idea what he's talking about. Yeah, sort of like that. And it was at that conference that I first shared far and wide the story as it was at that time. Many people at that conference had similar things happened to them.
Well, you said, let me backtrack. You said 2000. So what did you mean? 2020?
February 2020.
Okay, good. So about a month after you guys.
Oh, like you don't realize I knew about you in 2000.
I'd be a little upset.
2020, yeah. 2020 was February of 2020. It was in Florida at this conference. And these are people that I'm pretty intimate with professionally, and some of them personally too. I shared the story. And people said, oh, yeah, I have my own story or my cousin's story. And most of them had not gone well, which didn't really discourage me because I just felt so much faith in Yaakov's joy at the whole thing and, you know, the energy you bring. And there was a letter you and he talked about, which I'll discuss in a moment. Remind me. So I learned later the Enneagram is personality sort of typing tool, but it's not really the best one out there, at least not according to Brene Brown. But it is also, according to Brene Brown, one of the best growth tools out there, and it's been very, very powerful for me in this inflection point, in this growth spurt, emotionally and spiritually, also to some extent physically, that I've had since COVID. Really, I mean, it was more or less around the start of COVID. And one of the things I learned as part of that journey over the next 3 years is that we have in our greater family every one of the 9 broad types in our family, in our broad family, except one.
For our audience, who is unfamiliar with Enneagrams, can you name them?
Well, there's types 1 through 9, and they have different names. And I'm a 7, which is sometimes called an adventurer. Pop is a striver. Your father.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see you as the adventurer too.
And our sister is 1, which is I can't remember what they call ones, but I'll call it a sort of the judge, you know, seeing things as black and white, you know, thing. Yaakov's a 9, which is sort of the negotiator. Peacekeeper, right? Is another word for, yeah. My mother's an 8, which is the fighter, you know, and my wife's a 6, the protector. Sophie's a 4, sometimes called the artist, bit of a misnomer. Chloe's also a 9. But you may have noticed there's one missing. Oh, and I believe that my nephew Yaakov's oldest is a 5, although he refuses to be typed. You know, he's like, I don't fit into a type, but pretty sure he's 5, which is a you know, sort of a rationalist thinker. But we had no 2 in the family. And that proved to be, in some ways, a really interesting gap because we've determined are 2, fairly rare male 2. And I realized that you brought a vulnerability, a powerful vulnerability, again, as Brene Brown would say, that really doesn't really exist in this family. Being vulnerable is not considered particularly powerful and not particularly safe. And that was the first thing I realized, is that you were here to teach me, and maybe teach some others close to me, how to be powerfully vulnerable. And you have, and I thank you. It's been a wonderful gift.
Well, I'm glad I could do it. I'm glad I had the chance to do it. I didn't believe it until that it was even a powerful tool. But I do believe in it. And I can only say thank you for every step of the way to even believing that point of my vulnerability being a gift. When you wear your heart on your sleeve all your life, begging for someone to connect to you when you never had that connection with a parent growing up, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And I always thought it was a disadvantage. So,
well, it can be.
It can be, actually. You remember what the disadvantages of the twos are? Or at least the unhealthy twos?
Absolutely. But even if you are being powerfully vulnerable, you have to be prepared to have the vulnerability taken advantage of and be okay with that and be all the stronger, more resilient for it, which takes a lot of personal anti-fragility, I'll call.
The flip side of that coin, unfortunately, is, and I've experienced it a lot in my life, is it's a very manipulative trait of mine that I'm not proud of. But twos, when they're not as healthy as they can be, use their vulnerability or use their helper sense where they want to help or save everyone. And if they don't get that same intensity of love or affection or whatever they're trying to put out into the world back to them at the exact same intensity, what do I feel? I feel abandoned and rejected if that same intensity isn't given back to me. Help an old lady across the street, because it's the right thing to do, and she doesn't say thank you and just walks away. It's that little thing is devastating to it too. That's being unhealthy.
Yeah, I wrote, when I took my notes, I was talking about, I was doing sort of a mind bubble of all the different themes and writing the lines between them. And service to others and service to self were two of the bubbles. And I was thinking about how important the journey for most of us is to, in this family, including yourself, to learn that service to others is service to self. You don't need to be stroked. But I wanted to talk about the letter, and I wanted to talk about it in terms of that I think will be a little hard for you to hear, and that you don't have to publish and share if you don't want to. But my sister was particularly intense about doing this letter to you and doing it as the three of us. And that scared me because my sister in some ways embodies more than any other family member, a family system that we have of, gathering allies, particularly against, another person, usually outside the family, but often in it. And in this case, that person was our father. As I told you, she had a difficult relationship. This was very difficult for her to about your insistence. I don't think she knew yet the difficult burden your coming up would be on our mother. So it was fairly clear to me that she, that some of her interest in you was about her relationship with her father. And my daughter also called me and wanted to talk about her grandfather, wanted to, Leshanhara, to talk about him negatively with me about, what this said about, and I, wouldn't have anything to do with it, which was very frustrating. And I wasn't interested in it. And it pained me that people I loved around me, including my sister, wanted to use it in what felt like a weapon. So when she said, "Oh, let's do this all together," I was like, I'm worried about where this is going. And of course, the letter was not about that. It was a fine letter. There's nothing wrong with the letter. I did not participate much in the letter. I let, my brother and sister lead. I didn't have, I think I might have made a couple of corrections, but I mean, it was like, letter's fine. I don't know why we all have to send a letter, but it's fine.
And for those folks who remember, in the last episode, it was the ancestry message that the siblings participated in to first reach out to me and say that they acknowledged that they knew about me. So,
and at the time, I did not know yet at that point how much you had invested in the process. I mean, all I knew at this point is that you put out there on Ancestry.com, my father knew about you. I think at that point I realized that my mother knew about you, and that they had decided not to share it with us. After I talked to the lawyer, father called me or texted me and Johnny and said, "Oh, this was a Thursday, I think," and he said, "Oh, I want to have a call with you sometime this weekend whenever you're available." And I picked up the phone and called him and said, "I don't know what century you think you're living in, but you have maybe 1 minute to get ahead of this. You don't have till this weekend. Unless you're incredibly lucky, but why stretch your luck? You want me to, bring John on right now and we can just talk?" So he said, the basics of the story and explained that they made a decision not to tell the kids because it had been at that point 30 years. You hadn't come forward. Decided by 30 persons grown if they don't want, or you had means. They figured to get in touch. You hadn't, and it would be very complicating and humiliating. He didn't share humiliating, but I don't think he did. Later he did. Later he talked about his feelings, but which didn't particularly interest me. I mean, that's the past, and it wasn't. It's like. But it was of great interest to my sister and later my brother too. And that for them for a while became a bit of a focus. Was what does this do to our relationship? And I just that wasn't a road that even really occurred to me when they tried to bring me, my sister in particular tried to bring me down, and I just was like, no.
why? Why no? And I'm not saying you didn't have any interest. You didn't want to be involved in the weaponization of the story.
Yeah, I didn't want to be participating in the triangles and this. And I was at the beginning of this journey of figuring out what my family system looked like and the parts of it that were beautiful that I wanted to continue for myself and, my own family, and the things that I wanted to figure out how to let go. And this was an early thing that I identified as something that was a very strong part of family system I want to let go. My sister called me this was it was the Me Too time. And, she tried to cast, father's actions as, an abuse of power, which it may very well have been, and, what it reflected on him. And I just said, maybe, but, this was 50 years ago. It's her father.
I would like to put out there off the record, asking you, you're dancing around what happened when I was conceived. So
didn't you discuss this in the first podcast?
I don't know. We haven't talked about my side of the story yet. So, so when you say abuse of power, back on the record now, when you say abuse of power, we're talking about the infidelity that occurred with our father and my mother during the time that she was working for him and during the time.
Yeah, I don't think
he was married to your mother,
directly working for him.
I believe she was his secretary.
Very junior. No, she wasn't his secretary. I know for a fact.
Oh, really?
His secretary.
She was in the company.
She was in the company. She wasn't a secretary. But there was a huge power dynamic difference clearly between them, and it is my understanding that my parents were separated at the time, which has nothing to do with the power dynamic, I don't think, but which really upsets a lot of the women in the family when I bring up this fact for some reason. It seems to me, if you care, which I don't particularly, my heart bleeds for my mother and the abuse that she suffered from my father over a long and difficult marriage, but just not interested in going back. And I mean, I have my own errata in my own life that I would correct in a second edition, which is the harder work. Correcting other people's errata for them is just indulgent.
It just shows how the growth both of us have seen in each other over the last many years of letting go of the past and trying to stay present and just focusing on what is good in everyone.
Right. Yeah. Which is, which has been challenging, increasingly challenging for me in these difficult times of conflict with, members of the family. Although, along with the increasing challenge, have become what I hope are increasing skills and power and equanimity that seem to be on the right challenge. But, I am done. Hashem, if I could take a break from all the exams for a while.
Yeah,
if you don't mind. Maybe
yeah,
3
I agree. Can I have a day off for my head for just a minute? Yeah.
Fewer family challenges.
So you had left off with not wanting to be in the weaponization of me against our father, and the letter was...
It wasn't you against the father, it was the fact of you.
Yes, and the letter was written and sent off. You didn't participate a lot in the letter, which was fine.
Yeah, but I did. I mean, I was on the call.
Yeah.
And then your response was forwarded to me, and I said, "That's great." I think I was in Europe at that point.
Did you have was there any inclination, because you mentioned a few minutes ago you didn't have an idea of the investment I had in this? Was my letter or response back through Ancestry a bit of a eye-opening to that investment?
Yeah, but it was also freaky because it was my first direct exposure to your powerful vulnerability, which I was not prepared for.
I don't think anyone was in this family.
Well, no, I definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Including me. I was really. It was scary.
I think our sister called me intense in the beginning, not to my face, and I took it like an insult.
The beginning,
yeah,
a few months in.
Yeah, and I took it. I was hurt by that, but I was hurt by any word I didn't understand coming out of this family's mouth without thinking about it and understanding the perspective of it. But
well, I'm not sure it was meant as a compliment, but it was more a comment. It was more of a comment on herself than it was about you, of course.
Well, I was,
and where she is.
I look back now and how we've grown in the last 5 years, and yeah, if I could watch myself going through all this, I'd probably be like, slow down, calm down. You don't need to connect with everyone this second at an intensity that you've always wanted your whole life.
And I tried to explain that to you for years in different ways. And I told you a story about Aaron's son, who was a 7 like me, according to my therapist. So Aaron was the first of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. He was a Levite, like you and I are Levites. And he was also a Kohen, which you and I are not. His sons, and this is in Leviticus, his sons are doing the sacrifice on behalf of people of Israel to Yud-Heh, Vod-Heh, to God, the Most High. And they decide to do something different. The Bible calls it strange fire. They bring strange fire to the altar, and they're killed instantly. Scholars, people who take the Bible for a spiritual inspiration, have argued about what this means. And I thought about it for a while, and I realized it was a commentary on leadership and youth, wisdom, and, meeting the people you're supposed to serve where they're at, not where you want them to be or where you're at. I don't think this strange fire was profane. I think it was a foreshadowing of a future practice of spiritual people not sacrifice animals, but to do something to merge with the divine itself in a way that was far more metaphysical. And I think Aaron's sons were onto this and wanted to move people along 3,000 years a little too fast. And Hashem said, God said, you want to work on advanced stuff? Come up here. You're not ready to be.
Yeah.
You want to go to graduate school? All right, let's go.
Yeah.
And it was a lesson for me because I've made that mistake many, many times in my life, all the way back to middle school. And I kept making that mistake, and I kept making that mistake, and I kept making that mistake. I made other mistakes too, like just being wrong as opposed to ahead of her. But when I realized that this story was about this kind of error in a leader, I really started to inculcate that lesson. And I saw that, you had something to learn from that story too, because you wanted to have everything all at once right now and for people to respond to you with the kind of powerful vulnerability that you were putting out. And, that doesn't happen on this plane of existence very often. And certainly not in the family as it was at that time.
Yeah. So regarding the biblical lesson that you mentioned, and not everyone's going to respond to you in the same intensity that you want them to, in relationship with that, it was the very first, I'd say, lesson that I internalized in therapy, probably a year into this, which was everyone has their own process. And everyone has their own speed at to which they will come to you or to where you want them to be or where they can be. And I can't rush it. And this comes from you and your wisdom. And it doesn't always have to do with me. Most of the time it doesn't. So the fact that Johnny rushes to me at 10,000 miles an hour and you were a bit slower and our sister was much slower, it crushed me. I mean, if the whole family acted the way Johnny did, oh my God, this would it would be a dream come true. But like you said, that doesn't happen on this plane of existence. So understanding about a year into this, my very first big lesson, which I still remind myself every day, is everything is a process and everyone has a process. So was it maybe you were at my house in Ellicott in the East Coast?
I came to visit you.
Yes. We were sitting at the kitchen table.
This was our second time together.
Probably. You had to be in town.
First time together. And I had come that day and met some of your friends and forced you to play a board game.
That's right. And you had spent the night. And
Ticket to Ride. I think it was Ticket to Ride.
Still hate that game. Actually, I don't. I should say I do. I am enjoying it. It takes me years to understand how to play any board game, and you had spent the night and you insisted on spending the night at my place, which is, I can't explain why it's a dream come true that a brother of mine would assume he would be spending the night at my house, but that's what I always wanted. So it's our second time meeting. And this time, like we said, I had met you in person out here in Phoenix many months toward the end of 2020 because of COVID. And then probably it was the beginning of the following year, maybe, or the end of 2020 where you had come out to see me, maybe the beginning of 2021. Okay. And you, like I said, you came to visit, you assumed you were spending the night, which is a beautiful assumption to make. And we're having breakfast the next morning and still getting to know each other, and you're still trying to understand me and my vulnerability and trying to guide me, which everyone in this family does, especially my siblings, to make sure I don't get hurt and to go through this with a sense of stability and not fearful, and just to prepare myself for the good and the bad that comes from any family. So give me a second. So, oh my God, dear Lord. For those folks who or may only be listening to this, I'm holding a pillow, a beautiful pillow that my dear oldest brother gave me recently to put in my place here in Phoenix.
Okay, well, it's a painting.
It's a painting. Yep. I was going to let you. Yep.
By Rubens.
Rembrandt, isn't it?
Rembrandt,
Yeah.
sorry, thank you. By Rembrandt. And it's called Isaac Blessing's Grandchildren, and it is also from the Bible. And I had been thinking about this painting a lot at the end of 2020. And I think Passover was coming up, and in the Haggadah, the prayer book that we use, that my family uses for the Seder, this painting appears. And beautiful painting. But there was something unusual about the painting, about how prominent Joseph's wife, Asenath, is in the painting. And I got curious about that, and I realized it linked with a lot that I was studying about conflict resolution in family. And so I was in the process of talking about this, learning this lesson, and then I realized something about our own situation, which I then shared with you, which you will now get totally wrong.
I probably will, so I'm just going to let you continue. No, I want you to...
No, you're doing this.
I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to give you the cliff notes. I need you to expand. So while the elder father is blessing his grandchildren...
I'll get you started. So, right, Joseph is Isaac's son. They've been estranged for almost all of Joseph's life, for reasons you can know or you can read about in the Bible. While they were estranged, Joseph became very successful professionally and became the vizier, the advisor to the Pharaoh. And in part, probably because of his prominent position, he was married to the daughter of a high priest of Egypt, whose name was Asenath, who is not discussed in the Bible at any length. And yet, Rembrandt depicts her in the center of this scene. And I asked myself, why? At a family reconciliation, is this insider-outsider, right? The in-law, who's not really part of the family, but is part of the family. Why is she depicted so centrally in this reconciliation moment of one of the founding families of Judaism? Why is she there? She's not even Jewish, right? Of course, neither was Rembrandt, but okay. This is what I asked myself. So what did I tell you? First, I explained to you the biblical scene and who she was. And then what did I say?
I'm not going to say it as beautifully and eloquently.
Well, just say what you heard, because I think that's what's important.
I heard she's pictured in the center because she was seen, well, by Rembrandt at least, to be the glue or the bridge to mending the relationship between father and son. And sometimes it takes an insider outsider to get you to open your eyes to the importance of family and to the importance of parental and child relationships.
Yes. And this is what the great family advisors try to be, is that bridge, that insider outsider. Beloved like a family member, but not caught in the system of the family, as you were not. And yet you were beloved already. And so I saw you filling a great kindness for us, a healing kindness for us that you've already partially fulfilled. And get your ass in gear, because you're definitely not done.
Maybe in the next life we'll finish this project. I'd like to end on this. you mentioned the word beloved, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, down the road as we continue telling the story. But you had mentioned my name, Ami, in the beginning. It is my Hebrew name that was given to me by this family. It stands for Amiasaf.
Amiasaf ben Reuben.
Amiasaf ben Reuben, or Ami for short.
Reuben is our father.
That's right.
That's Amiasaf ben Reuben.
And we'll get into the whole ritual and ceremony that you did when you provided me and gifted me this name, and you announced during the ceremony what it meant. And
I whispered.
Yes, you did whisper it as I was bawling my eyes out through the whole ceremony. And he whispered in my ear, it means beloved son.
It means a beloved son will unite us. Reuben is beloved son, and Amiasaf is one who unites. So beloved son will unite us.
I think it's a perfect place to end. Listen, in the next episode, I think it's going to be my turn to talk and discuss why I came to this family with such an intensity, why I went at 10,000 miles an hour, why my letter back to them was so vulnerable, and why I wore my heart on my sleeve during this whole entire process, where that all comes from. And then we'll take it from there. But I love you so much.
And I love you so much.
And I appreciate all of your wisdom. It guides me every day. It really does.
No, I really so cherish you in my life in so many ways. And I hope to be able to express it in
Here. All right. We're out. We'll talk to you next time on the Healing Helix. Thank you, bro. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Healing Helix podcast. We do truly hope our story helps others to heal in similar situations around DNA discoveries. So please like, comment, and share the show as we continue along our journey of healing together.